Dr. Lisa Martinez felt her heart beating fast as the shuttle landed on the alien world. Through the small window, she could see purple grass moving in the wind and strange blue trees that looked like giant flowers. This was her first time on another planet with living beings who could think and talk. The planet was called Kepler 442b, but the aliens who lived here called it something else in their own language. The humans had been trying to say it right for weeks, but it sounded like singing mixed with whistling. The aliens called themselves Valkorians, and they were much taller than humans, with long arms and legs that moved like dancers. Lisa was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl reading books about space. Now she was part of the first human team to visit this world. The big ship called Stellar Dawn was waiting in space, above them, while a small group went down to the planet's surface. Commander Jake Harrison led their group. He was a strong man with kind eyes who had been to many dangerous places before. With them were 2 other scientists, a translator, and 4 security guards. They all wore special suits that would keep them safe from any germs or bad air. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. Lisa took her first breath of alien air through her suit's filter. It smelled different, like flowers mixed with something metallic. The gravity felt lighter than Earth, making each step feel like a small bounce. Walking toward them across the purple grass were 5 Valkorians. They moved with smooth, flowing steps. Their skin was pale green with silver patterns that seemed to shift and change in the sunlight. They wore long robes that floated around them as they walked, but Lisa's attention was pulled away from the aliens by something else. Behind the Valkorians came the most amazing and scary creatures she had ever seen. They were called shadow maws, and they looked like a mix between a lion and a dragon. Each one was as big as a horse, but with 6 legs instead of 4. Their fur was black with silver stripes, and their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. The Valkorians had told the humans about these creatures before the meeting. Shadow maws were not just pets or animals. They were smart, proud, and very dangerous. They chose their own riders and would only obey someone they respected. Most shadow maws would never even look directly at strangers, and they certainly never came close to beings they did not know. The Valkorian leader, whose name sounded like wind chimes, stepped forward. Through the translator, his words came out, in slow, careful English. "Welcome to our world, humans from Earth. We greet you in peace and friendship." Commander Harrison stepped forward to reply, but something strange happened. All 5 shadow maws suddenly turned their heads toward the human group. Their glowing eyes focused not on Harrison, but seemed to look at each human in turn. Lisa felt a chill run down her back as one of the largest shadow maws stared directly at her. The creature's eyes were not angry or hungry like she expected from a predator. Instead, they seemed curious, almost familiar. It was the kind of look she might get from a dog that thought it recognized her but was not quite sure. The shadow maw tilted its massive head to one side, studying her face with what looked like interest. The Valkorians started making excited sounds in their musical language. The translator was having trouble keeping up with their rapid speech, but Lisa caught words like impossible and never seen before. The leader of the shadow maws, a huge male with scars across his face, did something that made everyone freeze. He walked slowly toward Commander Harrison, his 6 legs carrying him in a smooth, careful gait. The security guards reached for their weapons, but Harrison held up his hand to stop them. The giant predator stopped just 3 feet away from Harrison. Then it did something that the Valkorians said had never happened before in their history. The shadow maw looked directly into Harrison's eyes and held the gaze without looking away. Lisa watched in amazement as the 2 beings, human and alien predator, stared at each other. Neither looked aggressive. Neither looked afraid. It was like watching 2 old friends recognize each other after a long time apart. The Valkorian leader's voice came through the translator, full of shock. "This is not possible. Shadow maws do not make eye contact with strangers. Even with their chosen riders, it takes months of bonding before they will look directly at us. Yet your leader, it sees something in him." Other shadow maws began approaching, the humans. They moved slowly, carefully, but without fear or aggression. One sniffed near Dr. Lisa's gloved hand. Another sat down next to one of the security guards like a giant cat seeking attention. The human stood very still, not sure what to do. Commander Harrison never broke eye contact with the Alpha Shadow Maw. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and steady. "We come in peace. We mean no harm to you or your world." The Shadow Maw made a low sound, almost like a purr, but deeper. Then it did something even more surprising. It lowered its great head in what looked like a bow before turning and walking back to its Valkorian companions. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. They exchanged gifts, shared basic information about their worlds, and made plans for future meetings. But Lisa's mind kept returning to that moment of recognition between human and alien predator. As they walked back to their shuttle, she pulled out her recording device and began making notes. Something important had happened here, something that might change everything they thought they knew about humans and their place in the galaxy. She did not know it yet, but similar reports were already coming in from human teams on 3 other worlds. Apex predators everywhere seemed to recognize something familiar in human eyes, something that put them at ease rather than making them want to fight or hunt. Lisa looked up at the alien sky, full of questions that would soon lead her on the greatest adventure of her life. 6 months had passed since the meeting on Kepler 442b, and Dr. Lisa Martinez could not stop thinking about what she had seen. She sat in her small office aboard the Stellar Dawn, surrounded by screens showing reports from human teams across the galaxy. Each report told the same strange story. On every world where humans had met alien life, the same thing happened. The biggest, most dangerous predators on each planet seemed to recognize something in human eyes. They did not attack or run away. Instead, they acted calm and curious, like they were meeting old friends. Lisa had collected data from 12 different worlds now. Each case was the same, but also different. The predators were nothing alike. Some lived in water, others flew through the air, and some hunted on land. They had different numbers of legs, eyes, and teeth. Some were covered in fur, others had scales, and a few had skin like rubber. But they all did the same thing when they met humans for the first time. The second case had come from Zephyr Prime, a world made mostly of crystal mountains and glass forests. The native people there were small, careful beings who lived in underground cities. They stayed hidden because of the glass talons, giant birds with wings sharp enough to cut through metal. Lieutenant Ben Cooper had been leading a survey team when the glass talons found them. The birds were known to attack anything that moved on the surface. Their razor wings could slice a person in half without slowing down. But when they saw the humans, something different happened. Instead of attacking, the glass talons landed nearby and watched the humans work. The largest one, with wings that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight, flew down and perched on a crystal formation just 10 feet away from Cooper. It tilted its head and stared at him with large silver eyes that seemed almost friendly. The native people could not believe what they were seeing. They had been hiding from the glass talons for thousands of years. No one had ever been this close to the birds and lived to tell about it. Yet the humans walked around freely while the deadly predators just watched with what looked like interest. The third case was even stranger. Captain Amy Foster was a marine biologist studying the deep oceans of Oceanus III. The planet was almost entirely covered by water, with huge sea creatures living in the depths. The most feared of these were the krakens, massive beings with tentacles, as thick as tree trunks and eyes as big as dinner plates. When Captain Foster and her team went diving in their protective suits, they expected to stay far away from any large sea life. The krakens were known to crush submarines and pull ships under the water. But when Foster's team descended into the deep water, something amazing happened. A massive kraken rose from the darkness below them. Its tentacles could have wrapped around their entire submarine and squeezed it into pieces. Instead, the creature moved its tentacles in slow, gentle waves that looked almost like it was saying hello. It followed their submarine for over an hour, keeping pace with them but never coming close enough to cause harm. Foster later wrote in her report that the kraken's huge eyes seemed to be studying them with the same curiosity that humans might show when meeting a new type of animal. There was no aggression, no hunting behavior, just interest and what seemed like recognition. But the case that made Lisa's hands shake when she read it came from Lieutenant Ben Cooper again, this time on the jungle world of Verdania. The planet was covered in thick forests full of dangerous plants and animals. The most feared creature there was called the Mimic. The Mimic was a shapeshifter that could look like anything or anyone. It would take the form of a person's friend or family member, then lead them away from safety to be killed and eaten. The native people lived in constant fear of this creature because they never knew who might really be the Mimic in disguise. When Cooper's exploration team landed on Verdania, they expected to be very careful about trusting anyone they met. They had scanners and tests to make sure everyone in their group was really human, but they never got the chance to use them because of what happened on their first day. The Mimic appeared in the middle of their camp, but instead of taking the shape of one of the humans, it stayed in its natural form. It looked like a tall, thin shadow with too many joints and eyes that glowed like stars. It simply sat down at the edge of their camp and watched them work. For 3 days, the Mimic stayed near the human camp. It never tried to hunt them or trick them. It just watched with what seemed like curiosity. When the humans finally left the planet, the Mimic followed them to their shuttle and sat quietly as they took off. The native people of Verdania said they had never seen anything like it. The Mimic had never shown itself in its true form to anyone before. It certainly had never spent time near people without trying to hunt them. Lisa printed out all the reports and spread them across her desk. She drew lines connecting the similar behaviors, made notes about the different types of predators, and tried to find patterns that might explain what was happening. When she presented her findings to the Galactic Research Council, the other scientists did not believe her. Dr. Williams, the head of the xenobiology department, said she was seeing patterns that were not really there. He claimed that 12 cases were not enough to prove anything, and that she was making the alien animals sound too much like Earth animals. But after the meeting, Captain Roy Sullivan quietly approached Lisa in the hallway. He was a deep space explorer who had been to more worlds than almost anyone else. He looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned close to her. "I have seen it too," he whispered, "on worlds so far out that they do not even have names yet. The big predators, the dangerous ones, they all do the same thing when they see humans. They stop hunting and just watch us like they know us from somewhere." Lisa felt her heart racing. If Captain Sullivan had seen the same thing, then her theory might be right. There was something about humans that apex predators throughout the galaxy recognized. But what could it be? And why did it happen on every world they visited? She looked out the window of the space station at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there were answers to questions she was just beginning to understand. How to ask. Dr. Lisa Martinez was not going to give up. Even though the other scientists did not believe her, she knew something important was happening. She needed help from someone who understood how minds work and how species change over time. Dr. Kate Adams was perfect for the job. She studied how thinking and behavior passed from parents to children in different species. Kate had worked with alien minds before and was not afraid of new ideas. When Lisa showed her all the reports, Kate's eyes grew wide with excitement. "This is incredible," Kate said, looking at the data on Lisa's computer screen. "If this is real, it means there might be something built into human DNA or behavior that apex predators across the galaxy can recognize, like a universal signal that says we are not enemies." They worked together to plan a new kind of study. Instead of just collecting reports from other teams, they would go to dangerous worlds themselves and test their ideas. They needed to see the predator behavior up close and measure it properly. Their first test came sooner than expected. A distress call arrived from the planet Crimson Reach. The human colony there was under attack by creatures called bloodhounds. These were not like Earth dogs at all. They were as big as bears, with red fur and glowing eyes that could see into people's minds. The bloodhounds hunted in packs and could sense fear, anger, and other emotions from far away. They had been killing colonists for weeks, and no weapons seemed to stop them. The colonists were hiding in their buildings, afraid to go outside. Lisa and Kate volunteered to go to Crimson Reach with a rescue team led by Security Chief Alex Turner. Turner was a calm, brave man who had fought in many battles before. He did not seem afraid of anything, which made him perfect for dealing with psychic predators. When their ship landed on Crimson Reach, the colony looked like a ghost town. Empty streets, broken windows, and signs of fighting were everywhere. The colonists watched from behind locked doors as the rescue team walked through the town. They usually attack within minutes of sensing new people, the colony leader told them over the radio. Be ready for anything. But minutes passed, then hours, and no bloodhounds appeared. Turner led the team to the edge of town, where the attacks had been worst. They set up equipment to study the area and waited for something to happen. Lisa was checking her scanner when she heard Turner's quiet voice. We have company. She looked up and felt her heart stop. Coming out of the red grass were 12 bloodhounds, the largest pack anyone had ever seen. Their eyes glowed like burning coals, and their massive paws made no sound as they moved. These were the creatures that had been terrorizing the colony for weeks. The lead bloodhound was huge, with scars across its face and shoulders that showed it had survived many fights. It walked straight toward Turner, who stood perfectly still, and watched it approach. Lisa wanted to run, but she forced herself to stay and observe what happened. The giant predator stopped just 5 feet away from Turner. Its glowing red eyes locked onto his, and Lisa could almost feel the psychic energy flowing between them. For long moments, neither moved. Then something amazing happened. The bloodhound's aggressive posture relaxed. Its ears, which had been flat against its head, came forward in a curious position. Its tail, which had been stiff with tension, began to move in what almost looked like a slow wag. Turner slowly extended his hand, palm up, toward the creature. The bloodhound sniffed his glove, then made a sound that was part growl and part purr. The other bloodhounds in the pack began to relax too, sitting down in the grass and watching the humans with interest instead of hunger. Impossible, Kate whispered, recording everything with her camera. Bloodhounds are supposed to be driven by hunting instincts. They should not be able to control their aggressive behavior like this. The lead bloodhound looked at each human in turn, its psychic senses studying them. When its eyes met Lisa's, she felt a strange sensation, like the creature was looking not just at her face, but into her memories. But there was no threat in that gaze, only curiosity and something that felt almost like recognition. After 20 minutes, the pack leader made a decision that shocked everyone. It turned to face the colony buildings and let out a long, howling call. The other bloodhounds joined in, creating a sound that filled the air like music. Then, as one group, they turned and walked away from the human settlement. The colony leader's voice crackled over the radio, full of disbelief. They are leaving. All of them. The bloodhounds are leaving our territory and heading into the deep wilderness. In 30 years of living here, I have never seen anything like it. Lisa and Kate stayed on Crimson Reach for 3 more days, but the bloodhounds never returned to bother the colonists. It was as if Turner's peaceful meeting with the pack leader had convinced them that humans were not prey to be hunted. While they were still on Crimson Reach, exciting news came from another world. Dr. Nina Walsh, an archaeologist working on the desert planet Sahara 7, had found something incredible in ancient caves. The caves contained paintings made by a species that had died out long ago. But these were not ordinary cave paintings. They showed creatures that looked remarkably similar to Earth's prehistoric predators, saber-toothed cats, giant bears, and massive wolves. Alongside these familiar-looking animals were symbols that matched patterns found in human brain scans. It is like whoever made these paintings knew about both human minds and Earth predators, Dr. Walsh reported. But that is impossible. These paintings are millions of years old, made long before humans ever left Earth. Kate studied the photographs that Dr. Walsh sent them. Lisa, look at this, she said, pointing to a symbol that appeared over and over in the paintings. This pattern matches the neural activity we see when humans make eye contact with someone they trust. How could an extinct alien species know about human brain patterns? Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they formed was bigger and stranger than anything she had imagined. The extinct species on Sahara 7 were called the architects, according to the research notes Dr. Walsh had found. They seemed to have studied life forms across many different worlds before disappearing completely. But why had they been so interested in predators and human behavior patterns? As their ship left Crimson Reach, Lisa looked out at the stars and realized their investigation was just beginning. The Bloodhound's recognition of Turner, the ancient paintings showing Earth-like predators and the symbols matching human brain patterns were all connected somehow. Someone, or something, had wanted apex predators throughout the galaxy to recognize humans as familiar. The question was why, and what did it mean for humanity's future among the stars? Dr. Nina Walsh's discovery on Sahara 7th had given Lisa and Kate their first real clue about the mystery. The ancient cave paintings were like a map leading to more answers. Nina had found symbols carved into rocks that pointed to a place called Nexus Station, a dead world at the edge of known space. Lisa convinced Commander Harrison to take their research team to Nexus Station. The planet had no atmosphere and no life, just gray rocks and ancient ruins covered in dust. Most explorers avoided it because there seemed to be nothing valuable there. But the symbols from Sahara 7 suggested this empty world held important secrets. Their ship, the Stellar Dawn, landed near the largest ruins. The buildings were made of a strange metal that did not rust or break down over time. They looked like they had been abandoned for millions of years, but they were still in perfect condition. Dr. Kate Adams walked beside Lisa as they entered the main building. Their boots echoed in the empty hallways. The walls were covered with the same symbols they had seen in the cave paintings, but here they glowed with a soft blue light. "Someone left the lights on," Kate joked, but her voice sounded nervous in the quiet space. Professor Sam Davis, their language expert, was already studying the glowing symbols. Sam was good with alien languages and had learned to read dozens of different writing systems. He ran his scanner over the walls and shook his head in amazement. "This is incredible," Sam said. "The symbols are not just pictures. They are a complete language system, more complex than anything I have ever seen. It is like they wanted to make sure anyone who found this place could eventually understand their message." As they went deeper into the building, they found rooms full of strange machines. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built. Screens showed star maps of the entire galaxy, with thousands of worlds marked with different colored dots. In the center of the main room was a large crystal that pulsed with soft light. When Lisa touched it, the whole room came alive. Screens lit up everywhere, showing images and data that made her head spin with excitement and fear. "It is some kind of database," Kate said, watching information flow across the screens. "Look at this. There are files on thousands of different species, including detailed studies of their predator animals." Sam worked frantically to translate the alien text. As he decoded more of the language, the story became clearer and more frightening. The beings who built this place called themselves the architects. They were not just observers of life in the galaxy. They were its creators. "According to this," Sam said, his voice shaking, "the architects seeded life on worlds throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. They did not just let evolution happen naturally. They guided it, shaped it, designed it for specific purposes." Lisa found a section of the database that made her sit down hard in one of the ancient chairs. The screen showed detailed genetic maps of apex predators from dozens of worlds. All the creatures she had studied were there: the Shadowmaws, the glass talons, the bloodhounds, and many others. But what shocked her most was what she found when she looked deeper into the genetic data. Every single apex predator species in the galaxy shared the same basic neural patterns, the patterns that controlled how they recognized other beings, how they decided who was friend or enemy, how they chose to hunt or protect. "Kate, you need to see this," Lisa called. "All the predators have the same recognition programming in their brains. It is like they were all built from the same template." Kate looked at the genetic maps and her face went pale. "Lisa, look at this comparison data. The template they used, it matches human neural patterns, not similar to human patterns, exactly the same." The truth hit Lisa like a physical blow. The architects had not just designed apex predators throughout the galaxy. They had used early, human ancestors as the template for creating every major predator species. That was why the creatures recognized something familiar in human eyes. They were seeing the genetic memory of their own original design. But the most shocking discovery was still to come. In the deepest part of the database, Sam found files labeled Project Genesis and The Template World. When he opened them, they showed detailed records of planet Earth going back millions of years. Earth was not just another world the architects seeded with life, Sam said, reading the translated text. It was their laboratory. They used early, human ancestors to test and perfect the predator recognition systems. Every major predator on Earth, wolves, lions, bears, sharks, they were all practice runs for the Galactic Seeding Project. Lisa felt dizzy as she understood what this meant. Humans were not just another species that had evolved naturally on Earth. They were the original template that the architects had used to create a galaxy-wide system of biological control. The database showed that the architects had foreseen that their template species would eventually develop space travel and spread across the stars. When that happened, they wanted to make sure that apex predators on every world would recognize humans not as threats or prey, but as the original architects of their own existence. But why? Kate asked. Why create this system? What did they want to accomplish? The answer came from a file marked Final Protocol. The architects had not disappeared or died out. They had evolved beyond physical existence, becoming beings of pure energy and thought. But they needed a younger species to continue their work of guiding and protecting life throughout the galaxy. Humans were designed to be their successors. The recognition system in apex predators was meant to make it easier for humans to explore and settle new worlds. Instead of being attacked by the most dangerous creatures, humans would be accepted and even protected by them. The database contained vast libraries of biological engineering techniques, ecosystem management protocols, and terraforming technologies. All of it was meant for humans to inherit when they became advanced enough to understand their role. We are not just explorers, Lisa whispered, staring at the screens full of ancient knowledge. We are supposed to be the caretakers of life in the galaxy. But even as she spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The activation of the database had triggered something. Across the galaxy, dormant genetic switches were turning on in apex predators everywhere. The recognition behavior was becoming stronger, more pronounced. On worlds where humans had not yet arrived, apex predators were beginning to exhibit strange behaviors. They gathered in unusual formations, looked toward the stars, and seemed to be waiting for something. Lisa realized that by finding this place and accessing the database, they had started something that could not be stopped. Humanity's role as inheritors of the galaxy's biological stewardship was no longer a secret waiting to be discovered. It was an active reality that would change everything. The question now was whether humanity was ready for such a massive responsibility, and whether the other species in the galaxy would accept humans as the rightful inheritors of the architect's legacy. The changes started happening immediately after Lisa and her team activated the ancient database on Nexus Station. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as dormant genetic programs awakened in apex predators everywhere. On the Valkorian homeworld, the Shadowmaws abandoned their usual territories and gathered in the largest open field on the planet. Thousands of the massive predators sat in perfect circles, all facing the same direction toward space. They had never done anything like this before in their entire recorded history. The Valkorian leaders were terrified. They sent emergency messages to the human diplomatic team begging for answers. The Shadowmaws were not hunting, not eating, not doing any of their normal behaviors. They just sat and waited, watching the sky as if expecting something to arrive. Similar reports came from every world where humans had encountered apex predators. The glass talons of Zephyr Prime stopped their usual territorial fights and began building strange formations with crystal shards. The ocean krakens surfaced in groups and created patterns on the water that could be seen from space. Even the shape-shifting mimics revealed themselves in their true forms and gathered in the deep forests. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood in the command center of the Stellar Dawn, watching reports scroll across dozens of screens. Each message brought news of predator behavior that made no sense according to everything scientists thought they knew about alien life. It is like they are all waiting for orders, Dr. Kate Adams said, studying the behavioral data. The genetic switches we activated are not just making them recognize humans better, they are making them prepare for something. Commander Jake Harrison looked worried as he read the latest diplomatic messages. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session. Half the member species are panicking because their world's most dangerous predators are acting strange. The other half are demanding that humans be banned from all exploration until we figure out what is happening. Lisa knew they needed to return to Nexus Station. The ancient database had more secrets to reveal, and she was certain the answers they needed were hidden somewhere in the architect's records. When they arrived back at the dead world, something had changed. The facility was fully powered now, with lights glowing in sections that had been dark before. New rooms had opened, revealing even more advanced technology and data storage systems. Professor Sam Davis was already working to translate new files that had appeared in the central database. His face was pale with exhaustion, but his eyes burned with excitement. "I found it," Sam said. "The final message from the architects. They left instructions for what humans are supposed to do when the awakening begins." The message was recorded, in a format that created both sound and images directly in their minds. When Sam activated it, Lisa felt like she was standing in the presence of beings made of pure light and wisdom. The architect's final message was both beautiful and terrifying. They explained that they had spent millions of years guiding the development of life across the galaxy, but they had reached the limits of what physical beings could accomplish. They needed successors who could continue their work with fresh perspectives and new ideas. Humans were not just designed to be recognized by apex predators. They were created to understand and communicate with all forms of life. The recognition system was just the beginning. As humanity spread across the stars, they would discover abilities they never knew they possessed. The awakening of the apex predators was a signal. It meant that humanity was ready to accept their role as the galaxy's new caretakers. But it also meant they had to make a choice. They could accept the responsibility and gain access to technologies that would let them heal damaged worlds and guide the evolution of new species. Or they could refuse and watch as the carefully balanced ecosystem of the galaxy slowly collapsed without proper guidance. The predators are waiting for us to give them new instructions, Kate realized. They were programmed to serve the caretakers of life in the galaxy. Now that we know we are supposed to be those caretakers, they are ready to help us. Lisa felt the weight of countless worlds pressing down on her shoulders. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined when she first became a scientist. The survival of life throughout the galaxy might depend on how humanity responded to this discovery. The final part of the architect's message contained coordinates for a location at the very center of the galaxy. There, they had built a massive facility that could coordinate biological management across thousands of worlds. It was waiting for humanity to claim it and begin their work as the galaxy's gardeners. Commander Harrison made the decision to take their findings directly to the Galactic Council. The other species needed to understand what was happening and why. More importantly, they needed to decide whether they could accept humanity's new role. The journey to the galactic capital took 3 weeks. During that time, reports continued to arrive about predator behavior across the galaxy. But now Lisa understood what she was seeing. The creatures were not acting randomly. They were preparing to help their new caretakers restore balance to worlds that had been damaged by pollution, war, or natural disasters. When Lisa stood before the Galactic Assembly, representatives from 200 different species filled the vast chamber. Some looked curious, others appeared frightened, and a few seemed angry. She knew that her next words would determine the future of human exploration and possibly the fate of life itself in the galaxy. "We did not ask for this responsibility," Lisa began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "But we cannot ignore what we have learned. The architects chose humanity to continue their work not because we are perfect, but because we have the ability to see ourselves in others and others in ourselves." She paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from dozens of different worlds. Every apex predator in the galaxy recognizes something familiar in human eyes, because we carry the genetic memory of every predator that ever lived. We are connected to all life, and all life is connected to us. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species welcomed humanity's new role, hoping it would bring peace and healing to their damaged worlds. Others feared that humans would use their connection to apex predators to dominate the galaxy. In the end, the decision was made not by politicians or diplomats, but by the predators themselves. Across the galaxy, the awakened creatures began, moving toward human settlements and colonies. They did not come as conquerors or threats. They came as partners, ready to work alongside their genetic cousins to heal the wounds that centuries of conflict had left on countless worlds. Lisa stood on the observation deck of the Stellar Dawn, watching as a pod of space whales approached, their ship. These massive creatures lived in the vacuum between stars, and no one had ever been able to communicate with them before. But as they drew close, she could see something familiar in their ancient, wise eyes. They recognized her, just as she was beginning to recognize them. Humanity's journey as caretakers of the galaxy had begun, and they would not be traveling alone. Every predator, from the smallest hunting bird to the largest space-dwelling leviathan, would be their companions in the greatest adventure of all, nurturing and protecting life among the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but for the first time since leaving Earth, humanity knew exactly where they belonged in the cosmic order. They were not conquerors or explorers. They were gardeners, and their garden was infinite.